ABC General Hospital spoilers for Thursday, April 24th tease that Molly has finally made a decision she should have taken long ago, drawing a clear boundary with her father, Rick. After months of trying to maintain a fragile connection with him, Molly can no longer ignore the increasingly erratic, and even dangerous, behavior Rick is exhibiting. He is no longer the father she once trusted and admired, but a distorted, chaotic version of himself, wrapped in schemes and shadows. Recently, Rick's strange behavior, cryptic words, secret meetings, and even actions that Molly herself finds hard to believe, have forced her to stop and set limits to protect herself. However, drawing that line doesn't mean turning her back on him. She's Rick's daughter, yes, but also a sharp prosecutor, an intelligent woman who won't be easily fooled. As rumors begin to spread about Rick's potential involvement in shady dealings, from legal manipulation to clandestine connections, Molly realizes this is no longer just a family dispute. This is a clear sign that an investigation needs to be launched, and the only person close enough to do it is her. Not because she wants to destroy her father, but because she needs to know the truth, no matter how brutal it may be. Molly starts quietly gathering information, following leads, piecing together fragments from testimonies, mysterious encounters, and the smallest signs others might overlook. But the deeper she digs, the darker things become. Rick isn't just acting on impulse, he has a plan, a structure, and possibly a secret alliance backing him. Molly now finds herself facing not just a father spiraling out of control, but a menacing force slowly revealing itself. The deeper she goes, the more she's pulled into a labyrinth with no way back. She begins to lose sleep, constantly looks over her shoulder, and feels as though she's being watched. Anonymous calls, missing files, uncharacteristically silent witnesses, everything points to her uncovering a truth someone desperately wants to keep buried. But Molly won't stop. Despite the fear, despite the pain. She knows if no one dares to expose Rick's actions, he could drag many others down with him, even the innocent. This is no longer just a father-daughter story. It's an inner war. The rise of a young woman forced to become the investigator of her own family. And Molly, though deeply wounded, is slowly turning her pain into strength. She is no longer the girl clinging to the remnants of a broken bond, she's the one standing in the face of darkness, ready to expose everything. No matter how much it shatters the image of the father she once loved. Sonny is heading into surgery, not just to save his fragile life, but as a pivotal moment that could determine the fate not only of himself but of all of Port Charles, a place he once ruled, not through legitimate power, but through respect, fear, and loyalty. Sonny's body is worn down after days of battling not just enemies, but a failing heart struggling to keep him alive. Doctors have warned, if surgery isn't performed immediately, death is inevitable. But what they couldn't warn him about is that this operation has become the epicenter of a growing storm, where medicine is just a surface layer. And life or death is truly being decided by murky alliances, old enemies, and unseen hands moving in the shadows. At a hospital in Los Angeles, as Sonny is wheeled into surgery, the atmosphere turns suffocating. Outside, yellow lights flicker down the hallways, medical staff rush around, but no one knows that within this seemingly safe space, a storm is about to explode. Carly, who was once everything to Sonny and is now the only person standing by him as everything falls apart, is more than just a worried ex-wife. She is the last link keeping everything from collapsing. Carly knows better than anyone that if Sonny doesn't make it, it won't just be a funeral, it'll be the unraveling of an entire underground order, a chain reaction no one can control rippling through Port Charles. While the doctors make their final preparations, Carly quietly takes crucial steps to protect Sonny, not just from the risks inside his body, but from external threats, enemies, opportunists hoping to strike at this vulnerable moment. She personally reviews medical records, demands background checks on the entire surgical team, increases security camera monitoring, and continuously updates Jason on the situation inside and outside Port Charles. Not because Carly is paranoid, but because she knows the reality of the world she and Sonny have lived in. Where enemies don't need guns, a single wrong injection is enough to end an empire. Everything teeters on the brink. Carly realizes there's no time to act on emotion. She must move with reason. With survival instincts sharpened by past tragedies. At this moment, she isn't just protecting the man she once loved fiercely, she's protecting the memories, Sonny's legacy. The future of the Corinthos children, and her own image as Carly Spencer, a woman who never backed down from any threat. Tension spikes when a leak reveals that an assassin may have infiltrated the hospital, possibly disguised as a doctor or nurse, waiting to strike while Sonny is unconscious. Carly knows it's real. The vague threats in recent days, the anonymous calls, the unfamiliar faces lingering in the hospital, they're no coincidence. She no longer suspects, she is certain. Someone doesn't want Sonny to survive this surgery. And the only one standing between life and death for him right now, is her. No security guard or law enforcement can react faster than Carly's instincts. She is no longer the woman behind Sonny, she is his stand-in in this decisive moment, the one holding the line for a legend's life, fueled by grit, determination. And a love that still burns beneath it all. To everyone else, Sonny is just a patient. But to Carly, he is the heart of a fragile world. If he stops beating, Port Charles might stop breathing too. Madness is erupting, not just in the hospital corridors, but inside Carly's own mind. She knows she can't do everything, but she keeps going. She knows she's crossing the boundary between emotion and reason, between reality and obsession, but she has no choice. Sonny must live. Because if he doesn't, the stability she, Jason, Michael, Willow, and the town have held on to, will crumble into pieces that can never be put back together. And as the doors close, leaving Carly alone in the hallway, only silence remains. Silence. And belief, and the quiet descent of darkness. But Carly knows, if Sonny lives, they can rewrite everything. And if he doesn't wake up, she will be the one to light the next fire, not to warm, but to burn down the world that dared to touch the man she couldn't afford to lose. On a quiet yet emotionally charged afternoon in the Quartermain living room, Danny unexpectedly came to Jason to open up about something that had been weighing heavily on his mind for a long time, his mother, Sam. The conversation between father and son began with hesitation and silence, but every word from Danny struck a deep chord in a part of Jason's heart that he had long kept buried. Danny was no longer the innocent little boy he once was. He was now old enough to recognize the distance and the fragile cracks in family relationships, and this time, he didn't want to stay silent. He asked Jason why everything had changed. Why things between him and Sam were no longer the same. Why all the joyful days now lived only in the past. That question forced Jason to face the reality he had avoided, that the changes he once believed were necessary had unintentionally created a distance, not only between him and Sam, but between him and his own son. It was a kind of reckoning Jason had never anticipated, a reckoning with the way he had lived his life in isolation. Believing that keeping his loved ones away from the darkness he was surrounded by was the best way to protect them. But as he listened to Danny, Jason felt a veil begin to lift. He could no longer view things through the old lens. That silence was safety, that distance was a form of love. For the first time in a long while, Jason felt the pain he had unknowingly caused the very people he had always meant to shield. This conversation wasn't just a child missing his mother, it was a wake-up call for a father too used to carrying everything alone. And in that moment of reflection, Sasha's name unexpectedly resurfaced in Jason's mind, in a very different way. She was no longer just a woman who had endured great loss, no longer just a girl tormented by judgment and societal doubt. Jason began to see Sasha through a new lens, one of empathy, of connection that he had never before allowed himself to feel. Like him, Sasha had lost the most sacred things, family, love, honor, and even herself. But what truly shifted Jason's perspective was how Sasha didn't fall apart. She stood back up. She was reborn. Quiet like him, but in that silence was a life force Jason now recognized as familiar. When Jason looked at himself through Danny's eyes, he no longer wanted to be the silent man trapped in harsh decisions. And when he looked at Sasha, he saw someone who not only understood that pain, but could walk beside him through it. No promises. No chains. Just a deep empathy built from shared suffering. That conversation with Danny didn't just touch Jason's heart as a father, it reshaped his entire understanding of himself, those around him. And the connections he once thought were fragile but now realized were deeply powerful. Jason no longer saw himself merely as a protector, but as someone in need of reconnection with emotion. Something Danny reminded him of, and Sasha is now helping him rediscover. A new chapter is beginning in silence, but within Jason, the transformation is more powerful than ever. And this time, he won't retreat. He'll live, feel, and hold on to what matters, if his heart tells him it's worth it. Cody never imagined that a relaxing horseback ride with Molly, something that was supposed to be an escape from pressure, a way to find peace amid the chaos of Port Charles, would become the moment that forced him to confront real danger. The sky that day was blue, the sun gentle. And everything began like a perfect afternoon. Molly, who had been trying to escape the emotional tangle of her family, especially the prolonged tension with Rick, had agreed to go with Cody. Someone she had started to feel an unspoken but powerful connection with. But the trip didn't end as expected. In a careless moment on a steep forest trail, Cody's horse was startled by a loud noise, causing him to lose balance and fall hard onto the rocky ground. The fall wasn't just painful, it left a deep wound in his leg. Blood soaked through his pants, his pulse pounded in his temples. And a wave of dizziness swept over him. Molly panicked. She had never seen Cody like this, a man normally strong and defiant, now lying motionless, barely clinging to consciousness as the pain hit in waves. What seemed like a simple accident soon unraveled into something far more complicated. Cody's serious injury required emergency hospitalization, triggering a flood of questions, from why they were in such a remote area, to the true nature of their relationship. But beyond that, it forced Cody, who always kept others at arm's length, into a vulnerable, dependent position where he had to rely on someone else, and let others see him at his weakest. That was something he despised, but now, he had no choice. The wound was severe, and once at the hospital, doctors quickly determined Cody needed surgery to stop the bleeding and stabilize the fracture. News spread fast, and familiar faces began appearing, some genuinely concerned, others watching from the shadows. The accident was not just a physical trauma, it inadvertently pulled Cody back into the center of an investigation he had long tried to avoid. While unconscious, fragmented memories returned, faces of old enemies, whispered deals, ignored warnings. Molly, though initially overwhelmed, now stood strong at his side, caring for him while quietly blaming herself. She wondered if things would have been different had she said no to the trip. But deep down, she knew they both needed that journey, to escape, to breathe, to reflect on themselves in a world that had grown too tangled. And perhaps, for that reason, this meeting, though it ended in a hospital, might just be what leads them into a deeper, more intense, and irreversible bond. As Cody lay in bed, bandaged and recovering, Molly sat at his side, holding his hand. Outside the emergency room, quiet waves of chaos had already begun to stir. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a complex ripple, both in their hearts and in the dark political undercurrents of Port Charles. Cody would have to face the truth. And Molly, perhaps she had already gone too far to turn back. Brooklyn was drowning in an unusual unease, a creeping melancholy that haunted even the most mundane moments of her day. Everything around her continued as usual. Deception's office remained busy, Chase still smiled that gentle smile every time he walked in, and Lois still cooked and scolded lovingly like always. But beneath all the familiarity, Brooklyn felt something was wrong. A subtle shift was taking place, not obvious, but enough to make her feel like everything was being pulled just slightly off course. There was no dramatic incident, no harsh words, but it was the strange silences, the seemingly innocent actions of those around her that tightened her chest. Each time she stepped into the office, Brooklyn couldn't shake the thought, are they hiding something? Was there a meeting she hadn't been invited to? Was she being left out of something important? Every message that didn't include her, every conversation that paused when she walked in. Every glance that darted away, all felt like tiny, sharp pieces cutting into her thoughts, fueling a growing fire of doubt. Brooke Lynn had never been paranoid. But after all the betrayals, misunderstandings, and manipulations she'd endured, her need for control was now almost a reflex. This time, however, the feeling had gone beyond being cautious. It was turning into obsession. She started working later, checking contracts herself instead of trusting her assistant, rereading emails word for word to ensure no one was setting her up, and even scanning other departments' schedules to see if she was being purposely excluded from meetings. She didn't tell Chase, not because she didn't trust him, but because she feared he'd think she was losing it. But in truth, everything inside her was stretched thin, ready to snap from the slightest pressure. Brooke Lynn couldn't sleep peacefully. She dreamt disjointed visions where she entered a room full of familiar faces, yet no one could see or hear her. She screamed, but only silence answered. It was the kind of dream that left her awake in the middle of the night, heart racing, feeling like she was slowly being erased from her own life. That mental shift began to shape her actions. She spoke less. Her eyes lingered too long in places others wouldn't notice, memorizing everything. She started saving meeting recordings, requesting contract duplicates sent to her personal email. Even secretly tracking certain coworkers, convinced someone was trying to seize power behind her back. But the scariest part? She couldn't stop. Even if everyone was just busy or dealing with personal issues, the feeling of exclusion wouldn't leave her. And that's why Brooke Lynn was spiraling deeper into an internal tension, a kind of quiet madness. Subtle. Silent. Dangerous. She felt the need to act. But how, when she didn't know who the enemy was? When there was no concrete proof, only a collage of instincts she couldn't even name? Brooke Lynn didn't have the answer. But she knew one thing for sure, she couldn't wait any longer. Because if she didn't take control, someone else would. And then, she truly would be pushed out of the position she had fought, cried, and bled to reclaim. In the glitzy, snake-infested world of deception, even a moment's hesitation could mean getting devoured. Brooke Lynn knew that, and she wasn't going to be the prey. Not this time. Not when she still had the chance to strike first.